When you hear the word infertility, what comes to mind? Most people think about woman, think about woman, think about cycles, think about egg or a womb. But here's the truth. Infertility is not just a woman's issue. Infertility is a human issue. And I know this for a fact. And this can even be so personal to me because I have walked this road. 8 rounds of IVF, miscarriage, years of waiting, tears, hope, and finally the joy of carrying my children. Today, I want to break the silence because silence and stigma makes infertility more harder. Hello, everyone. I am Joanne Oyedoku. And if you're new here, welcome to Life Bloom with Joy. I want to share a bit of my story with you today. As some of you may know or may have heard in most of other episodes that I've done in time past, why this topic is not just something I want to talk about, but something that I have lived through. You know, my journey with infertility stretched over 16 years because when we first got married, we had to wait for approximately about 4.5 years before we had our baby, and 11 years after the first baby before we had the second one. 11 years of appointments, hospital stay, surgery and waiting, open, and so many tears wetting my pillows at night. After 11 hours of surgery, as some of you may have heard in my story, to treat endometriosis, which was the cause of my infertility, we thought the worst was over. 6 months after the surgery, I started my first round of IVF. And by God's grace, the cycle was successful. And we welcomed our first daughter in 2021. And I thought to myself, I think I'm done. I think I'm over endometriosis, really, because we've had the surgery, they've cleaned it up, I got pregnant. Okay, maybe that wasn't the hard part. Maybe this wasn't as difficult as I thought, But the truth is, the road was far from over. It was like we were just beginning. Over the next several years, I went through a total of 8 rounds of IVF. And I'm sure if you're watching me, you'll be like, wow. Some cycles had to be stopped midway because my body wasn't responding. Some ended in heartbreaks when embryos didn't take or when we lost the pregnancy. I remember the crushing moments of being told there was no heartbeat at 10 weeks of pregnancy. I went for a scan and the room was quiet. And I was asking, what's wrong? And they told me they couldn't hear the heartbeat of the baby. My body immediately went numb. I wanted to scream so bad, cry at the same time, confused, didn't know what was going on. But yet, guess what? I swallowed it. I was ashamed of myself. And I just kept moving, kept living, and just believing somehow, someday, God will come through for me. Along the way, life didn't stop. Bills were coming in left, right, and center. I lost my dad in the middle of a treatment round. I lost my doctor as well, as you all may have heard, who became like a family to us. Like I said in my previous episode, she was like an angel. She felt my pain. And I have an appointment with her. She's always calming me, letting me know that I will have more children. I face physical pain from endometriosis, emotional and exhaustion from the constant cycle of hope and loss, and the pressure of people asking, when are we having another baby? Or what's going on? Why don't you want to give your daughter another sibling? Every question felt like a salt in an open wound. And trust and believe, I don't think they mean any harm. It's just that sometimes questions like that makes you feel more ashamed of yourself. Make you feel as if you're a disappointment. Make you feel as if there's something that you have done wrong. And yet, by God's grace, I didn't fall into depression. I had a lot of anxiety, even though I had every reason to, but I worshipped my way through it because I was very conscious and very determined that I didn't want to fall into depression. So I worshipped my way into it. Sometimes I'll pray, holding on to the promises of God, even in my brokenness. God was still writing my story, I know. But it was hard to believe in the midst of the confusion, in the midst of the chaos, in the midst of the difficulties and frustration. And finally, after years of waiting, hoping and trying one last time, God finally came true for us. And we had our second daughter in 2023. That was exactly 11 years after our first daughter. It wasn't easy. It was frustrating. It was challenging. It was painful. And all this, I was living in silence, in shame, in fear. But God came true for us. And that made it more harder for me. And I believe for so many people dealing with infertility. A journey that tested everything I thought I knew about myself, my body, my faith, and even my marriage. Thank God for the man that God blessed me with. Thank God for my husband. Trust and believe, I don't know where I will be if I didn't have his support. I share all this with you. I'm so vulnerable with my story. It hasn't come easy for me to come out and share my story. But I'm sharing my story because infertility is not just a number. It's not just a statistic. It's a lived experience, one that I have experienced myself. It's real, and real people are dealing with infertility. Real family issue, real tears. And why my story has its joy and victory, it also carries scars that many of you may understand too well. And many of you would be able to relate with it. But here's the thing, my story isn't unique. Yes, it's special to me. But globally, 1 in 6 people will experience infertility in their lifetime. That's millions of couples. family, men, women, often suffering in silence. And that's why I want to start a conversation around infertility. Why silence makes infertility harder? And how can we break this silence together? I can't do it alone. And look at the bigger picture about infertility. Because why my story is personal, is special to me, is unique to me. Infertility isn't just my story. It's a global reality that a lot of men and women are facing. A lot of couples, a lot of family, a lot of community are facing. According to the World Health Organization, like I said earlier on, 1 in 6 adults will face infertility in their lifetime. That's a lot. Think about that for a second. 1 in 6 people. So that means every 6 people you see, one person will face or experience infertility. Wow. That's not just a number on the chart. That's your sister. That's your neighbor. That's your friend. That's your family. That's your colleague at work. That's a church member. Infertility is happening in every community, every church organization, across every culture, and yet we hardly talk about it. Here's another important truth. In almost half of all the cases, yes, 50% of infertility cases, the cause of infertility is either female related or a combination of female and male related. And yet, society often pushes the weight on women. The blame, the shame, the stigma is squarely on women. That has to change. I don't think we should be the one carrying the weight of infertility all by ourselves, because this is something that affects both male and female. Now, let's break it down a little bit. For women, infertility can be caused by a condition like, you and I know it. If we have an exam on that, by now we should know. Infertility is caused by conditions like endometriosis. As a matter of fact, endometriosis is one of the leading causes of infertility. And like you all know, I had endometriosis. I dealt with endometriosis for most of my years. We also have PCOS, polycystic ovarian syndrome, which can disrupt ovulation. We have fibroids. So many women are dealing with fibroid issue, left and right. We have hormonal imbalance, that affects women generally. And some people even have blocked tubes that is often caused by untreated infection or complication. These are few of things that can cause infertility in women. Now, let's go down to men. Men also have issues. They have infertility issues. And their own is linked to low sperm count, poor sperm motility, meaning they don't swim effectively. The sperm don't swim effectively. And don't worry, like I've always said, I'm not a medical doctor. I'm just here to share my own journey and my own story. And I try as much as possible to bring in people that are experts in this field to come break things down for us. So one of these days, we're going to have a consultant, a gynecologist consultant, coming to, break things down for us a little bit more. For men again, they have abnormal sperm shape. These are some of the issues that can cause infertility in men. They also have hormonal issues, testicular injury. Sometimes lifestyle factors could also affect, like smoking, drinking excessively, being on steroid, or even using as simple as overeating from frequent hot baths. I don't know so much about it because I'm not a man. So maybe we have to bring men into this conversation. And yes, stress also plays a major role. A major role. And that's why I've always emphasized on this channel. Please rest as much as you can. Our body needs rest. And this is not only for men. Stress is both for men and women. It can play a major role in infertility issue. So when we talk about infertility, we need to be clear. It's not just a woman's fault. In fact, many a times, it's a shared responsibility. And, I'm not here to pass blame to anybody. I'm not here to say, oh, it's men's fault or it's women's fault. That's not the point that we're trying to get down to here. But the impact on us as women, the silence, the shame, the stigma, the reproach, the isolation, the mental health torture that we go through because of infertility is what we're trying to talk about. So let's talk about some things that doesn't get enough attention. The emotional part, the mental toll of infertility. Because this isn't just a physical journey. It's also an emotional marathon that can wear you out and make you even feel older than you are if care is not taken, if you don't pay attention to your body. The shame and the stigma are real. Friends, I can tell you that for a fact because I have been there and I know how ashamed I was. I know the stigma that I carried for years. In many countries, especially in Africa, but also around the world, women's worth is often tied to our ability to conceive and have children. And if we're struggling with infertility, people start asking questions. They start whispering, the pity that we face, or worse, the blame. Why don't you have a child? Some people, some communities, some culture even make a demand on the woman. It's painful because on top of the physical challenge that you're going through, that you're carrying the weight of cultural pressure and expectation that were never fair to begin with. How do we handle all this? For me, I remember the endless cycle of grief. As you can imagine, going through 8 rounds of IVF and trying one round and your body is not responding, trying another round, and then you get to the end of the cycle and everything fails. Every time a cycle fails, it feels like a funeral. It feels like grieving a child I hoped for. That's what it feels. Grieving the month of effort, injection, prayer, financial sacrifice. I know some of you can relate that didn't bring the result we dreamt for. Then after a while, I'll pick up myself again and I'll be like, okay, let me go and try again. Let me muster the hope in me again. Let me try again and see if it will work this time around, only to face another disappointment. And this was how I was dealing with it by myself, with my husband by my side, all in silence. Nobody knew. The outer world didn't know what I was dealing with, except for few close people that constantly, you know, frustration, the grief, the exhaustion of going through all the cycles, and you just keep going, just keep trying. There were days I felt less than who I am. There were days when I look into the mirror and question my body. There were days when I wonder why it was me that I have to deal with this. There were days I wonder if I was even enough for my husband, enough as a woman, enough in the eyes of the world. It's a pain that doesn't just stay in my mind or even in your mind. It slips into your heart. It slips into every area of your life, into your marriage, into your friendship, into your relationships, into your faith. And if care is not taken, you start doubting God. And let's be honest, infertility can take a toll on our mental health. Hey, anxiety. Hey, Lord have mercy. And I've shared my experience with anxiety before. The scare, the fear of, okay, is this going to work? Is it not going to work? Going through surgery, going through IVF cycle, the anxiety. For me, it was anxiety. I know so many people that fall into depression because of infertility. Isolation. These are things that many of us women and even men silently battle with. You start avoiding baby shower, start avoiding naming ceremony, start avoiding your friends, start avoiding family functions. You dread pregnancy announcement, and sometimes you feel like you are the only one going through it. But like I've always said on this channel, you're not the only one, and you're not alone. Remember, 1 in 6 people will experience infertility in their lifetime. So I want you to know, and I want that to sink in for a second, that you're not the only one experiencing infertility, and you're not alone. Spiritually, it tested me in ways I couldn't even explain. So many times I wake up in the middle of the night and cry to God. More times than even praying. I ask questions. I wrestle in silence with Him. And yet, even in the darkest moment, it was my faith that sustained me. And I want to encourage someone today, whatever you believe in, because I know that we have other religion. I am a Christian, and that's my foundation. But I want you to hold on to God, because in that darkest moment, it would definitely come true. Worship was sometimes the only thing I had the strength to do. I will play songs over and over and just sit down there listening to it, because words fails me. But deep down, I held on to the promises of God. that God has not abandoned me, even when circumstances screamed otherwise. I knew He was close by me. I knew He was in this battle with me. And that's the paradox of infertility. It breaks you down, and yet somehow, if you let it, it builds resilience, compassion, and faith in you like never before. I would never have believed in my wildest dream that I came out stronger than I've ever been. If you're watching this today and you have felt unseen in your pain, in your struggle, in your frustration with infertility, I want you to know I see you. More importantly, God sees you. God sees you. And it's so funny that this month, I was sharing with some ladies in the Life Bloom community. And I told them, I said, what dropped in my mind is the God that sees for this month. So I want you to know that wherever you are, God sees you. He sees your tears. He sees your sleepless nights. He sees your frustration. He sees your confusion. And they all matter. They matter to Him. Those tears are not going unnoticed. Your prayer matters. Your story matters. And you're not alone, even in the midst of the challenge, in the midst of the pain. You're not alone. One of the hardest parts of infertility isn't just the medical challenge, it's the silence that everybody surrounds us with. When you enter a room as someone dealing with infertility, everywhere goes silence. This silence hurts us more than the medical challenge. The shame and the secrecy created in loneliness that is unbearable at times is painful. So many women suffer in silence because of cultural stigma. They don't want to be judged and doing all kinds of things. We have a guest that is going to come on one of these days to share a journey of infertility and the desperation and what desperation did, the stigma, the silence, and what led her into desperation of doing all kinds of crazy things. I want to encourage you to look out for that episode. It's going to drop very soon. But here's the truth. When we don't talk about infertility, people don't get the support they need. When I keep my story to myself, you keep your story to yourself. Everybody keeps their story to themselves. So who is going to support who? We end up isolating ourselves right at the moment when we need community most. I know from experience, during my journey, there were moments when I hid my pain because I didn't want to deal with the awkward comments. Yes, that's true. But then, or even the pity look on people's face sometimes just put you off. But then how long can we continue to live in silence and in shame, carrying all this weight? But the more I kept it inside, the heavier it became. Silence magnifies struggle. And I'm going to say that one more time. I want that to sink in. Silence magnifies struggle. So, breaking the silence doesn't mean that the pain has disappeared, but it does brings light into the darkness. It invites in compassion, prayer, practical helps, and solidarity. It tells the woman who feels broken that there is hope for her. It tells the couples who feels alone that they're not alone. And it tells the world infertility is not something to be ashamed of. It's medical, it's emotional, and even spiritual sometimes. And it deserves to be understood and to get the proper attention that it needs. That's why I'm sharing my story. If you're asking, why am I doing this? Why is Joan being so vulnerable, sharing her story, bringing her business out? That's why I'm doing this. Because every time you speak up, every time I speak up, we help someone. We remove the shame of someone. We remove the stigma from someone. We remind others that they don't have to hide. And we make room for healing. And not just in our body, but also in our hearts and community as well. So now, after all the challenges we've spoken about, the challenges of infertility in both male and female, the silence, the shame, the stigma, I want to pause and remind you of something important. Like I've always said, infertility should not be the end of our story, should not be the end of your story or my story. Infertility is just a chapter in our story. And like I've always said, God is still writing the story. The journey of your life and of my life is far from being over. Our story is far from being over. So, yes, the journey is hard and will possibly get harder. But yes, it can feel never ending. Yes, but there's hope. I can tell you that there's hope. There are so many ways to move forward. And I'm just briefly going to share so many options that are out there. But please, like I've always said, consult with your medical doctor, your gynecologist. Talk to them. Let them have a one-on-one consultation with you. Every case is unique, and every case is not one size fits all. So I don't want anybody to say, oh, Life Bloom with Joan said this, so this is what I'm going to do. Please and please still consult with your medical practitioners. Like I've always said, and this is a disclaimer, I am not a medical doctor. I am just sharing my own lived experience. All right, let's talk about it. On the medical side, there are treatments and procedures that have helped millions of people. to start a family. You know, one of it is IUI, which is usually the first step that they get into before they proceed to maybe a more advanced one like IVF. They will usually try a couple of fertility medication and ask you to try naturally, you know, and everything. And if that's not working, then they do the IUI. That's usually the first step. And then if that's not working, then they will suggest an IVF, which is a more advanced way, you know. And there also hormonal therapy, which it will help depending on your case, depending on if your own issue is ovulation issue or to improve the sperm health and all that. They can place you on hormonal therapy. Also, there are surgical options depending on what exactly you're going through. Like in my own situation, yes, I had an IVF and I had so many IVF done. But before the IVF, I had to do an 11-hour surgery to clean up the endometriosis growth because my doctor told me if I didn't do that, then it's just like I'm putting money in the trash. It's just like a waste of money. The success rate of that cycle is very, very low with endometriosis. So I had to do the surgery to clean up the endometriosis before we then start the IVF cycle. And I've seen so many people and heard so many people's story about people that have fibroid. A lot of them too, they rather suggest that they do surgery to take out the fibroid, depending on the size, depending on the location, and everything. And that's why I said it's not one size fits all. So you have to consult your own doctor and talk to them and let them have like a plan for you, a care plan for you on what fits your own situation. People that have blocked tubes, some people they will cut it off, some people they will have a way of doing, I don't know. So please and please, once again, I'm saying this because I don't want anybody to come back and say I did this because she said that. Now, medical options are important, but it's just one piece of the puzzle. Lifestyle changing is also another option. I've seen people that had endometriosis, they didn't do surgery, they did lifestyle change. And it depends on what level. Mine was at stage 4. It depends on what stage your endometriosis is and everything. Some people decide to do a lifestyle change, simply, just managing what they're eating, and just doing a lot of restructuring, eating balanced diet, rich in, whole food, think less processed food, just more nutrition dense food, to help them, and also managing stress. I said it earlier on, stress can contribute to infertility or it can make it longer. So if you're already experiencing infertility, the number one thing to check off your list is I do not want. In fact, you should write it all over your space. No stress, no room for stress. And have a mental note, you cannot be stressed out. So whatever is going on, just take it easy, easy, light exercise. Just have something that you can use to, relieve yourself of any stress. Taking supplements, if you feel that you're deficient in any, like me, I had low iron. So I was constantly on iron pill because even if I was going, whether I was going for surgery or I was going for an IVF cycle, my blood level has to be at a certain level. So I was constantly on iron medication, just prioritizing rest, not just sleeping, but actually resting your mind to recharge your emotions and, just your whole body. your own body. We need to start paying attention to all that. And I say all this to say that everything that I've listed on here, all the options that I've listed, they're all piece. They're all piece by piece of the puzzle. But guess what? God comes in different ways and in different forms. And why are these options necessary? I want you, if you're out there and you are going through your infertility journey, I want you to, trust God for the best, but still be open to options. Don't box God. Don't box God. And when I say don't box God, this is what I mean. Don't say, oh, this is how you did it for him, so this is how you have to do it for me. The way God is dealing with A is different from the way God is dealing with B. And it's different from the way God will deal with C. Let God deal with you the way he wants to deal with you. Do you get what I'm saying? So don't box God. The fact that somebody had it naturally does not mean that you are going to have it naturally. Do you get what I'm saying? So there are different options. And like myself and my husband have said on this channel before, we even in our own journey, we were even open to adoption. Adoption is also an option. Do you get what I'm saying? Surrogacy is also an option. There's some people that, for some strange reason, their medical, their health and everything cannot just carry pregnancy. And they have to defect to someone to help them to carry it. And that doesn't make God less of God. That just tells you that the way God is going to answer your own prayer, the way God is going to come true for you, is different from the way God came true for your neighbor. And so that's why I said, please and please don't box God. Be open to how God wants to flow, how God wants to be a blessing and work his own miracle out in your life. For some, it's going to be natural. For some of us, it's going to be IUI. For some, it's going to be IVF. So, I say all that to say, I want you to hear this clearly. There's so many parts, like I've said, to parenthood. There's natural, there's IUI, there's IVF, there's adoption, there's surrogacy, there's even foster parents. And all of them are valid. They're beautiful and they're worth it. But even beyond parenthood, there are many ways to find peace and fulfillment while you're waiting. I've said it in one of my episodes before. While you're waiting, continue to live life. Don't pause your life because you're waiting. It could be frustrating, it could be challenging. Sometimes it could be even confusing. But I beg you, live your life to the fullest. Do not pause your life. There are things that in the process of waiting that God still wants you to achieve. God still wants to do in your life. There are things that God wants to have happen before even the baby comes. So please, I say it again, live your life to the fullest and in peace and fulfillment while you're waiting. Infertility should not define us. And I've said it several times. Just like I've said, we shouldn't even allow any medical condition to define us. Your worth is not tied to your womb or your sperm count. Your story is unfolding. And you have every reason to hold on to hope. Because you have a low sperm count does not diminish you as a man. Because your womb cannot carry a baby does not diminish you as a woman. So, finally, this is just the beginning. We're just starting this conversation, actually. And this month and many months to come, we'll be sharing and discussing about this issue of infertility. Sharing more stories of people that have lived through infertility. We'll be sharing more stories of, things that have happened along the line. Not just with me, but we'll be inviting other people that have had their own story. We'll bring in gynecologists to come and help us to dissect some things, to debunk some myths and women's health condition like endometriosis, like PCOS, like fibroid, and to give us some practical steps for healing. So I invite you to come on this journey, to come on this conversation with us as we get into it. Go into the comment section, ask your question, share your own lived experience or someone that you may know around you. Share their experience. Let us rub minds together. Let us learn as you're learning from my story. I also want to learn from your story. And so many other women that are also watching, listening, and they're in the comment section too. They want to learn about infertility. Let us break this silence. Let us strip away the stigma and let us help others that are still fighting the battle. Before I leave today, do not forget, share, comment, like, and help us to create this awareness. Share this video with other women, other men, whether they're dealing with infertility or not. Like I said earlier on, your friend, your neighbor, your family, your church member, your colleague at work, someone is dealing with infertility. Thank you so much for watching, and we'll see you in the next episode. Bye and God bless.